Hi, this is Lucy. For my money, one of the brightest young talents to have appeared on the television horizons in the last few years is the vivacious, Emmy Award-winning brunette from the Dick Van Dyke Show, Mary Tyler Moore. Hi, Mary.
How are you, Lucy?
I'm very, very happy to see you today, and I mean sincerely what I said about your being one of the brightest young talents I have ever seen in the industry. I guess you're kind of aware of my admiration for you because through the years I've sort of sent wavelengths your way.
You're awfully kind. I have been made aware of it, and I'm thrilled. Believe me, I am.
One of the things, Mary, that impressed me about you was your sincerity, first of all, but the fact that I think you're very sensible. Now, does that bother you to be called sensible?
No, it doesn't. It would bother me if I were called sensible after having given what I thought was a good comedy performance, and then somebody said, oh, yes, it was very sensible. But I enjoy thinking and planning.
But that's what shows in your comedy to me. See, I look at comedy possibly differently and explain comedy, try to explain comedy differently.
How do you do that?
That's it. I try sometimes, but I start with being sensible. Another word is believability.
That's true. You justify what you do. You can do great sketches which are basically unjustified, and yet your actions, and I'm speaking as a viewer of your shows, are always within reason. They are crazy and nutty, but you can never say that they're false.
You can't say that I don't believe them. That's what I mean by being sensible.
That's
I can call myself sensible while I'm doing the most nonsensical things.
Well, now, you had a dramatic background before you went into comedy, didn't you?
No, unless you call modeling at Hattie Carnegie's.
You never did any drama?
I never did anything.
Oh, I thought you had.
I just looked for work most of the time. What did you do before you got into the business?
Dramatic shows. I was what they call the guest artist on all the series that were on the air about 5 years ago, the 77 Sunset Strips and Hawaiian Eyes, where the roles were rather limited, and so was my performance, but I did get a lot of experience.
What happened before that? Were you just in school?
Before that, I was in school, but all through school, from the age of 8 or 9, I studied dancing and singing, and I used to travel around locally with the dancing school, emceeing the shows. So that was my experience with an audience. I'd get out there and recite some dreadful introduction to the 4 little sisters who do a tap routine. But it gave me confidence. And
the
of course,
dancing gave you a great background, didn't it?
I think so.
Discipline and grace.
I think so. And for freedom, so that you can get to the point where you're not awkward or aware of your body or what to do with your hands. You suddenly don't have to worry about that if you can dance and if you've had some background.
How far did you go in school, Mary?
To high school. I finished high school. I went to Immaculate Heart High School here in Los Angeles. And the next day after graduation, I started doing a series of commercials which ran for a year.
What took you so long? The next day?
The very next day. It distressed me terribly because, of course, that night after graduation, there was a big party and a dance, and I had to be home and in bed by 10 o'clock because I couldn't get up the next morning and have circles under my eyes.
And since then, the same thing has prevailed. You've been working rather steadily since then.
Been very lucky, yes, indeed.
Do you have any children, Mary?
I have an 8-year-old son.
What is his name?
His name is Richie.
Is he going to want to be any part of the profession?
I don't know. I don't think he does, although I can see that there are certain inclinations. He's very outgoing. He's almost an exhibitionist. If he's got one person in the room, that's an audience to him.
What does he do? Does he sing, dance, play an instrument or anything?
He attempts almost anything. Right now, as are most of the kids, he's in love with the Beatles. And he does impersonations of the Beatles. He plays the drums.
So does my son.
I know. How did you stand it until he got good?
Well, you know something? I shouldn't say this if any children are listening, but my son never practices.
He doesn't.
Isn't that awful?
Well?
He plays with combos. He plays at school. He's played in school bands. But he's always had lessons. And there's one day that he devotes to his lessons, both on the drums now and the vibes.
Yes.
But he gets his practice with the groups that he's performing with. And I have never nagged him in any way about his practicing because when he was smaller, I didn't want to discourage him.
No, that's right.
And so it sort of worked out that way now because he has enough
Well, then
going
he's
for it.
actually studying music, too.
Well, he's studying the drums and the vibes. He tried to get someplace on the piano, but his old habit of not practicing
Yes.
didn't work out so
Oh,
well.
I'm quite sure if I ever suggested to my 8-year-old that he practice, he would lose interest in the drums immediately, and maybe
Yeah.
that's my way out. Right now, he puts on a Beatle record at the highest volume
Yes.
and goes with one little
Yeah.
broken snare and a cymbal.
That's what they all do, to the records.
Yeah.
And I learned to do the little bit of nothing singing that I did for Wildcat by singing with records. So I recommended it one day, and it stuck. So I
Yeah.
just left it that way because he's learning all the different beats from by all the great drummers.
Yes.
You know, after all, he has some pretty good teachers, and he has a great ear. So playing along to the records has been a very wonderful thing. If Mary Benny, who lives next door, can stand the high frequency that goes from the juke.
That's what I worry about.
Well,
Neighbors.
I guess if you haven't had any complaints. Oh, is that why you moved recently?
Yes, and we may have to move soon, too. We've been in our new home for 8 days now. We haven't had any complaints so far. Maybe they're afraid to come over and see the idiots who moved in.
Can't you get a soundproof something or other? We haven't, but I'm considering it.
We've got one room upstairs that's in the middle of the house, and I think both neighbors on either side are pretty well protected. Everyone's protected except me and my husband, and no matter where we go in the house, we can feel it vibrating in the chest.
Well, I did put an edict down recently. I said, all right, young man, now you're going to turn that box down. You're not going to have it vibrating the neighborhood. I love to have you play with them, but not so loud. Now then, about your husband. You have a very handsome husband, Mary.
Oh, thank you.
He is as handsome as you are beautiful, and you are beautiful, inside and out.
Thank you.
How long have you been married?
We've been married 2 years, a little over 2 years.
Your son is by another marriage?
Yes,
And how does stepfather rate in your house?
very, very highly.
Oh, that
Oh,
speaks well
yeah.
for Mr. Grant Tinker.
It should. He's a wonderful person. He stepped into a situation that could have been very touchy for a long time
Of course.
and handled it very well indeed.
Mary, if you were not in the business, what would you like to be doing?
Well, I know I'd be doing something. I
You'd
know.
be still working. You wouldn't want to stay home and
No.
just... Have you ever had a lot of the guilt feelings that I guess all of us have at some time about not being there at times when
Yes,
it's important?
of course.
But we've worked it out pretty well at our house about making use of our time when we're out, when we are together. But
So do we.
We get lots of letters, from working mothers.
Yeah.
And of course the age-old problem of Daddy never being home anyway.
Yes.
But anyway, you say you do have some
We
guilt
do, and as you
feelings.
mentioned before, the time that I spend with my child, I think, without sounding as though I'm the world's greatest mother, is time well spent. It's not just a whole series of days and hours strung together where we don't really appreciate that time. We make a concentrated effort to get the best from each other and give the best to each other.
We make plans too. Oh,
Yeah.
Mary, our time is up. And I
Oh.
just wanted to go on the same vein we're talking about now. Could you possibly come back tomorrow?
Yes, I'd love to.
Give me a few moments tomorrow. I'd
I'd love it.
appreciate it. Thank you. I have been talking to Mary Tyler Moore from the Dick Van Dyke Show. See you tomorrow. Bye.